another proposal that I sent that they didn't pick, which is what we're going to go over. So the topic is essentially we're going to have a discussion around Tempest and similar signals intelligence that for stuff that is not classified. So I'm glad to see Bill here since he's probably the resident expert.
My memories of Tempest include almost breaking my legs. The first,
Tempest
I
scenario.
tried putting a Tempest keyboard on my lap as one does. It were heavy.
I see. Excessive shielding.
What I wouldn't say excessive, but it were a boat anchor. What the FAA was doing with a Tempest ASCII terminal, I don't know. I think I know who to ask, and I think he couldn't tell me. Because when the State Department didn't want to get security assistance of the RF variety from the intelligence agencies, because they were sort of, they're supposed to be cooperating, but they actually borrowed an FAA radio interference guru to do security scans of State Department premises that they were worried about having bugs in or something. It's basically the same technology. Anyway, he was the guy that got Boston Amateur Radio Club meeting space at Department of Transportation, Kendall Square in the old days, before he retired.
I see. Is there any hope or plan that we're going to resume meeting in MIT?
No.
Or are we going to continue virtual indefinitely?
Well, indefinitely until the plague titer in the sewage plants gets low enough that it's advisable, but MIT has said that it's not going to be them. The non-ranking staff were very pleased with closed campus during lockdown, with their buildings being badge access only. And they're saying that if you don't give me an office with a door, don't let random people in my building again. And while there's a certain amount of classism in academia, the clerical assistants are possibly treated better than grad students, but the grad students at least have a chance of getting a graduate degree out of it.
I suppose.
And that's not saying they're treated well, just better than dirt. But so, the support staff union will go on strike if they open campus again. At this point, it would be a change in working conditions that would have to be negotiated for. To reopen campus, what are you going to give us in contract negotiation in exchange for taking that away? And it'll be expensive. Might involve buying a lot of doors.
It's like the chimneys at Harvard. Remember a few years ago, all the dorms at Harvard closed all of their fireplaces. That one was not staff union. That was the insurance provider.
Yes.
Even though Harvard didn't have any real problem with fires in the dorms, it was obviously very well monitored. But
all of the dumb rules are written by the insurance companies. But
well, I work for IBM now, so don't underestimate my bureaucrats.
Yeah, but some of your bureaucrats' rules are coming from their insurer, sir.
True, true.
IBM's big enough they can self-insure for some things, but they may still listen to actuaries when doing so. And
I actually
from an
don't have it here.
From an actuarial point of view, having a chimney is a serious risk factor.
I suppose. I'm developing an allergy to people that don't think. But,
Developing?
It's getting worse.
Chimneys tend to attract ne'er-do-wells like Santa Claus.
And squirrels.
Well, MIT did have plenty of squirrel problems without chimneys. So let's, before we start, actually, no, I'll allow myself one more in terms of bureaucrats. My division has been transferred over to IBM January 1st, which meant we had to go over all sorts of paperwork.
Oh, but, so you're real IBM now?
I have 2 badges. I have the Jerry badge. I actually have 3 badges. I have 2 Red Hat badges because we're redesigning the access system, and 1 IBM badge for when I go to Cambridge. So I have a collection of stuff. But no, the interesting part of the transition was, aside from the fact that Red Hat IT managed to mess up royally our existing accounts, IBM is pretty good at onboarding people, so they did their stuff very well. But like we were saying, bureaucrats. So the highlight for me is that aside from all the documents that I received, I also received the document where they confirmed that I'm not dead. So I'm thrilled to hear that. But apparently, one of the many checks is that I'm not impersonating somebody else who's dead. So I'm not dead. Or apparently there is no record of my death, is what was sent over to me.
Good.
Which is good news.
When you get to be my age or Jerry's age, the first page you check in the newspaper is the obits and make sure your name's not there.
It actually, a lot of the paperwork I've received can be summarized as somebody sued for this, somebody sued for this, somebody sued for this, and that there is a stash of paperwork on my desk that could all be summarized by that. Somebody put explosive in their shoes, therefore everybody must take off their shoes at the airport kind of mentality.
Yeah, well, yes, a lot of it is the be sure to secure the door on the barn that burned down.
Yes, and that's a nice way to put it.
The lab and industrial safety people say that regulations are written in blood.
I suppose that's true. And it does work for things like air travel, so I'm not complaining about that. The problem is that bureaucrats apply the same strategy to everything, so some things are not life critical. But anyway, let's focus on our talk. So we were saying we're going to look at tempest and signal emanations in unclassified space. So I suppose the legal disclaimer, since we were talking about that, is that I'm not read into the Tempest keyword, so I cannot accidentally tell you classified information because I don't have it. We're just looking at things that are in the public domain. And also, we're not looking at Tempest in the strictest sense. We're looking at things that are adjacent to Tempest, which are more interesting these days. And why is that the case? We'll be clear in a minute.
And I never had access to anything other than the definition of the word Tempest that was once classified, which has since been declassified.
Very good. So with that, let's see. Let's start. Let's start from the basics, since this is going to go down in the rabbit hole real quickly. So, screen share. Oh, I'm so much into WebEx these days that I forgot. Share your screen. Okay. We're sharing the wrong screen. Can I change that?
Sometimes that can be embarrassing.
Nah. This case, it just looks cluttered. Let's see. Let's try redoing that with the application in the other window and in the other viewport. Use X terminology. Let's see what happens now. Yeah, maybe it's working now. Is it? Show me what I'm sharing. Woo. Yes.
Infinite regress, love it. I sometimes set my background to the Chaz Adams barbershop cartoon.
Okay, so hopefully I'm turning off the infinite mirror, but hopefully you can see what I'm browsing, since we're gonna pick all over the place. So first of all, what is Tempest? So let's find the right item here. I think it should be under code name. Oh, there we go. I skipped it. Funny, it's not under military. So the history of Tempest is actually, for what is public, it's really nicely detailed on the Wikipedia page. I've read this maybe the first time 20 years ago, and they kept adding things, so it's getting better and better. The code word Tempest is used to refer to signal emulations carrying data that you would want to have out there. In the most traditional sense, this was CRT emissions, I guess, were the most prominent because of how much energy was involved, and the ability to replicate the picture that was in a monitor at a distance, right? I don't think
in some sense, even before CRTs, the printing mechanism on a teletype or an IBM Selectric.
Right.
And
you're right.
Yeah.
There was that. And I mean, there were other cases of signals intelligence for sure. but we don't want to get into too broad a subject, right? So we're going to leave those out, but I think the teletype is certainly fair. No, that's all right. Your comments are always interesting. And I was thinking of something like there is this movie that I've been trying to track down, a 1940s movie that's referred to in Hasseltin's book. Hasseltin has a strange career. He was a Disney executive, and then he was hired by the government to be assistant director of the NSA. And he published a book around 5 years ago. I think it's The Man in Moscow Station or something like that. And it mostly centers around espionage against the American embassy, which is all signals intelligence. But at the very beginning, he has this reference to a movie that I haven't been able to find yet, which is a 1940s movie, where apparently the plot is that, similar to what the Russians were doing to the US Embassy in the 70s, the FBI or some other law enforcement agency is using a directed energy beam towards, I don't know, a room that they want to wiretap, and exciting the speaker of the radio in that room so that they could then use it as a microphone. And there is quite a bit of research on the fact that if you send enough energy towards I didn't get that. Yes, here. Send enough energy towards a target, you can turn almost anything into a microphone, and that's why the US Embassy is constantly bathed in almost dangerous levels of emissions in Moscow. It's actually outright harassment at this point. But the hope is essentially, well, we can put enough energy in there that something is going to act like a microphone. And apparently in this movie, the plot was centered around this. But this was a 1940s movie, so I find the idea quite cool. Tried to tweet at the author, who doesn't reply on Twitter anymore. And I tried to post to a few mailing lists that Bill suggested to see if I can find what this movie is, but so far, no success. But the reason why this is interesting is that side emissions, which I think in Hasseltin's book are referred to under the acronym PEMIN, which I believe is the acronym that the Russians like to use for the subject, is a fairly old topic, and with a very long history. Now, if I can, I'm going to skip to the next thing. I'm pretty sure that there is a 1970s or 80s BBC video, and actually maybe linked here. Let's see. Oh, another interesting cultural reference is Neil Stephenson's Cryptonomicon. In Neil Stephenson's Cryptonomicon, there is a Tempest type eavesdropping where they're trying to steal information from an adjacent room in an hotel, essentially by carrying out a leaked emissions attack. Yeah, here it's referenced. Van Eck freaking is what they call it there.
It's fictional, but it's actually
band electronic image.
A lot of details.
I thought it was a nice addition to the plot. I wasn't expecting that. Cryptonomicon was actually really an awesome book.
It's excellent.
Let's see if we can get lucky. No, we can't. So we are going to go to my bookmarks just in a second and find Is that it? No, this is cool, but it's not. Let's see. So to make a long story short, essentially as far as we know, the Tempest code word is referring to what you need to do to prevent these side emissions. And so how far of a distance should you have around the military base to not risk side emanations being picked up? How much shielding should you have, and so on. And this is an old keyword, so I'm sure that there are newer standards, but essentially the entire thing is being subsumed under this. There we go. I found it.
Federico?
Yeah.
It sounds like you went to a different web page, but what we're seeing on your screen is still the Wikipedia page where the certification.
Yeah, you should see it. You should see it now.
Okay, now we're seeing a YouTube page. Okay. Okay, we're seeing some kind of jerky video in the YouTube there, and it's like dead silent. We're not getting any audio from the YouTube.
I'm sorry. Can you hear it?
No, I can't hear anything from the YouTube. It just seems to be silent.
Okay. I will post the link for reference then, but essentially it's a demonstration of eavesdropping using of VanEck freaking using the emanations from CRT, and this was, I believe, early 80s. So I'm not sure if there is a way I can share that and you can hear it. If the audio is not carrying through, then probably not. One second. Okay. Okay. So let me see. This is not a very visual video. It's not high production value stuff, but it's essentially showing how they try to read this terminal from a van outside the BBC and how they go about decoding the signal. I'm going to save the Y Combinator link so that I can read it later. Thank you to Brandon for sharing that. Oops, I clicked again on the same link. There. So one thing is that these standards are largely classified, and at least in the West. And instead, it turns out that in Russia, with the fall of the Soviet Union, most of this expertise went over to the private sector in the 90s. The result is that apparently large enough companies in Russia can spy on each other using Tempest-like attacks, and their IT departments have to effectively protect against this air-gapped threat vector that doesn't seem to be as common in the West. I think that it would be good if we had a bit more information in the public sphere so that we could generally protect against this kind of thing as a more normal course of action, because I don't think that either Russian or Chinese not intelligence, but so much intelligence, but trade secret theft is bound by that sort of rule. So it would be good to be able to shield from these things as a matter of course. There was some information that got released in the early noughts. That was all in Russian, but it was a book about Pemin that was released in Russia for public access in the first decade of the century. That book has since been reclassified, so you can find the title on Amazon, but good luck finding a copy. So what little comprehensive type of information was available as in the open has disappeared. There is another thing, which is we can maybe find that the Tempest specification itself has been declassified, like Bill was mentioning. It's on Cryptome. Let's find that.
Oh, Federico. Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
I was about to say your web browser was the main body was grayed out because you had something selected in the search window, but I guess you unclicked from that and it went away just as it started talking about.
All right. Yeah, I guess it has to have the focus. NT1 -92 -1-5 .htm. You can get the idea of how old it is just from that extension.
Oh, can you post that link in the chat window?
Yeah. Oops. Here. So. Where is it? Is it this? No. Oh, it's transcribed. Okay. All right. There is something here. So the original release was a photocopy of a document with black marker all over the place. It was very colorful and really hard to read. So I guess they transcribed it and made it searchable this way. I haven't read this this year, but I read it when it was first released, and there wasn't a lot of information that would have been interesting, like the range that was prescribed, but there were some details in terms of power levels that were considered of concern. So it didn't, if I remember correctly, it didn't disclose what the protected range is or what is the required range that the government is demanding for considering things safe. But it didn't indicate what power levels were of concern. Which better than nothing.
The FCC has power levels for controlled and uncontrolled access spaces. It's in the novice test for ham radio license now.
Actually, since you're a ham person, kind of person, why is the FCC standard disclaimer saying that the device must not cause harmful interference, which seems obvious, and it must accept interference? I never understood that.
That's one of the things. That's one of the things they require, but they also require that a licensed installation not have emanations that are biologically dangerous to people that can get within the dangerous distances. So there's an unclassified definition of safe, which the crazies will say is inadequate and your cell phone's going to kill you, but crazy gonna crazy.
Well, if your cell phone doesn't kill you, your microwave oven will.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Don't defeat the interlock so that it doesn't come on when the doors open, and you'd probably be fine.
Well, that will probably kill you. Just because when you're defeating the interlocks, you will put your finger in the wrong place.
It's especially bad when you're heating up chili for 3 minutes, but you accidentally hit an extra 0 on the time. I just did that a couple days ago.
So, all right. So we covered what it is, what is available in the West, what the Russians temporarily made available before they decided that they hate us again. But the thing that is interesting for me, I mean, obviously this is interesting, but the part that I find interesting is that there are lots of side emissions that are not EM. And those seem a lot more exploitable these days. I mean, obviously, I suppose somebody may have a CRT. I have a couple here in the office. There is a Commodore 64 up there, and there is a Mac 2 SI over there as part of my museum, but there is nothing sensitive up there. And the screen that I'm showing you this on is a gigantic Dell screen, but it probably consumes less than 10 watts of power. So there isn't a whole lot to go with in terms of the amounts of energy. It's not as easy as it was before. But there are lots of other emissions that folks can go after. So one that I'm going to start with, just to get it out of the way, since it's not 100% on topic, is that somebody, I believe it was 5 years ago, and I believe it was a research team based in Israel. I can't remember which university. Showed that you could attack a voice assistant. I believe that they picked on Google's voice assistant specifically, but it would have been possible with Alexa just as well. And instead of using emissions, they were introducing signal. And the way they were introducing signal is that they would use a laser pointed directly at the microphone. The microphone in a lot of these devices is a surface-mounted MEMS device. And by modulating the light of the laser, they could actually transmit voice into the microphone that the Google device could hear. Obviously, we couldn't. And so this was about 5 years ago, before voice assistant devices started identifying the voice of the speaker and sort of having a built-in authentication. Then the only authentication was, can you reach the device, right? So you would visit a friend, and the first thing that you would go is, hey, Alexa, set an alarm for 4 a.m. tomorrow. And Alexa would just do it. So what this team did was that they discovered that they could do this from across the street using a laser signal very carefully aimed at the MEMS microphone of a Google Home. And there is all sort of demonstrations of this. There is a paper, there is a YouTube recording of their demo at DEF CON. I don't think that this is a relevant vector anymore, because they would have to mimic the fingerprint of your voice to get through. Well, the only voice assistant I use is Siri, so unless you sound like me, it would refuse any private request. But that was an interesting thing, and from there, a number of things have spawned. Let me see if I can just show you the first one. This one is, I think it's quite recent. It's a year, not even 2 years. Trying to navigate the screens here. All right. So this one has been referred to as glowworm, and it's a 2021 attack. Let's see what we have here. If the Apple synchronization obliges me, otherwise I'll have to type the URL. Well, it doesn't, so I will type it. It's strange. Usually things synchronize across Macs really quickly. Do I have a network connection problem? No.
As long as you're still connected here to Jitsi, that tells you there's no network problem. At least not in general.
Right.
Maybe the remote site might be down, or not pingable right now. Are you doing that in a separate browser window? Because we're still seeing the Kryptone page.
Yeah, I'm searching for it.
Okay. So when you pull it up, can you paste the URL in the chat window again? Actually, you should probably do that. You should probably do that for all the URLs that you're loading.
Right.
There we go.
Agreed. All right. Finally got it to work. So let's load up. So this one is, there were a number of them. I think in the first decade of this century, there was one where somebody demonstrated data exfiltration using the lights of modem banks. So it was still in the modem era, and there were data centers just like we all know. But then there were modems on these racks at ISVs, and somebody demonstrated that they could exfiltrate the signal of the connection by looking at the fading of lights in these modem banks. This is a fairly old paper.
Federico, we're still seeing the Krypton page.
It's still loading. Then I'm referring to something that's different from what I'm trying to show. So there was this one that was, I think, around 2004. It was modem exfiltration, again, kind of like CRT exfiltration. Who cares? It's gone the way of the dodo. But this one that I'm going to show you is much more current. Okay, so we're going to do it this way. Now that I found it the hard way, of course, it's synchronized. Computers always have to be fun that way. All right. So this is the overview page. Let's put the link here so you can also read it on your end. So let's go down the list. So this attack actually got its name, Glowworm. And I believe this was also out of a research group in Israel. I don't remember if it's the same group that did the voice assistant attack or not. But as you see here, the emanation is power LED of a device. Let's see if we are luckier with the sound. Can you hear this?
Yep, we hear you. Oh, no, we're not hearing the YouTube.
You're hearing me, but not the YouTube. Okay. So it's basically making an introduction where it says that there is a danger because now people are working from home and there are many more eavesdropping targets. And what they're trying to do here is eavesdrop on somebody that's joining a video conference from home.
Okay, can you post the YouTube link into the chat box?
Say again. John, say again.
I was asking if you could post the YouTube link in the chat box.
It's on the page that I just posted. Oh,
Uh-huh.
maybe I didn't press enter. Did I press enter? Yes, I did. It's on the first link off of Vinny's page there.
Okay.
So the attack here is essentially recovering speech by looking at the variation of the intensity of the power LED on the device. And this is exactly what I was describing on the earlier paper, where people were doing it against modems by looking at the variance of the intensity of light on the TX or RX LEDs of a modem bank. Now they're doing it at a much higher resolution, looking at the power LED indicator of the device. And essentially they recover the sound of the conversation by looking at this. So the target in almost all of these is what you can see here in the picture, not the LED of the laptop, it's the LED of the speakers and the variance of intensity on that LED. And I think their paper goes over a list of hardware. They didn't do it with just one pair of speakers. There we go. About 50% of the devices they analyzed were vulnerable to this. Google Home, again, it looks like that this hardware is popular in Israel. Logitech speakers, JBL speakers, Sony, Creative, Pebble. I have these. Great. Oh yeah, the Pebble has an LED on the right-hand speaker. That's right. So the LED, the power LED of the speaker is what they target, and using a telescope, they retrieve this this light variation at a distance. And I think that the video continues with them showing how they're doing this across different offices, and they was not giving credit earlier correctly, and this is Ben Gurion University. I think this is one of the most recent things that have come out, and it ties back to the old one of the modems that I was mentioning. But there is a lot of stuff like this. Glowworm is the most recent one. I don't think that the modem one has a proper code name, but people were not into marketing vulnerabilities as much back then. What else is there? I don't have the link here in my list, but there is one. Let's strange. Why is it not on my list? There is one that I find really cool that I wanted to demo. I'll do it eventually when scale lets me. That is called KeyTap. Let's see if we can find it. All right, let's try this way. Right, I don't have it here, but I have it in the research folder. Here we go. Right, there are a whole bunch of examples and source code on YouTube. So let's see if we can do this a little bit faster than the last time. Apple, help. Yes, thank you. So let's see. Since you guys don't get the audio, let me play this so you can see it while I'm narrating. Oops, here. So KeyTap is perhaps scarier, I think, because Glowworm is interesting. The fact that somebody can remotely eavesdrop by looking at the LED of your speakers is interesting, but I don't think that the vast majority of us treat our homes or our home offices or our co-working spaces as a skiff, right? We typically don't discuss confidential information there.
And if you treat it as a skiff, you don't have windows.
Yes, good point. So I don't think that people are that careless with information that is sensitive, but it's interesting. Glowworm gives you a longer range of eavesdropping beyond the guy over there in that conference room. So I need to worry about a little bit further away. Okay, got it. But KeyTap is interesting in a different way. So the emanation here is audio emanation instead of EM or light emanation. And essentially the idea is listen to the sound that you make when you type on a keyboard. Can we reconstruct what you typed there? So that obviously has a direct application in terms of stealing your passwords. But it's also a lot more insidious because I think that we do assume that sort of what we're typing on the laptop is fairly hard to get to, even in fairly open environments. So I don't think that people have the expectation that this can be that easily dropped on. Also, well, obviously professionals do have that expectation, but normal people don't. So this KeyTap is essentially a little bit of code where somebody has trained an AI/ML model, because nowadays we do everything that way. And this model is figuring out what is that you type based on how your keyboard sounds or how your typing sounds.
Don't get me started on machine learning.
Well, machine learning is a lazy way to do it, but it works. And so essentially they're retrieving the key stream just by listening to you type. That is the entirety of the attack.
Machine learning works if you and the training set both already know the answer. It's frequently questionable in cases where neither you nor the machine already knows the answer.
well, machine learning is a very hyped optimization technique. Let's call it that. I think that is really the problem. I mean, ML does something well, which is modeling things that we can't model well enough, and sometimes model things that we can model perfectly well, but it's a cheap and fast way to model it rather than the analytical way. That doesn't mean that
fast and don't care how cheap, fast, and don't care about accuracy. Yeah.
Yes, there is that too. So basically, the problem with ML is that the hype has overtaken the reality, even though ML is very interesting.
Right.
Not
and
the end of the world.
this is at least the third time that's happened, specifically
Yes.
with ML.
It happens every time. That's right. Every time there
I
is an ML
took a
breakthrough,
close
that
look
happens.
at it the last time. We can throw a hell of a lot more compute power at it now, so we can screw up bigger.
I don't want to trigger your blockchain response here, but
That
ML
would
is
be
not
wise.
that bad. It's just the amount of hype that is annoying now. The fact that everybody seems to think that Chat GPT will solve every single problem we have or take every single job we have, which is just ridiculous. I mean, it's a very good algorithm to generate sentences without understanding their meaning. So it's perfect if you work in sales. But
yes,
but beyond
guess
that,
what?
most
The
people
selling it do. The people selling it do work in sales, but the NPR's headline was ChatGPT generates plausible sentences, not correct sentences. It also does it with Dunning-Kruger level of confidence.
Well, it's very easy to detect that because it's interactive, right? So you ask a yes or no question of ChatGPT, and either the filter will intercept it, saying, "I cannot tell you if Hitler or Stalin is worse because my company doesn't want me to tell you," or you ask it, "Is RHEL or Ubuntu better?" It will say, "Well, I cannot really get there. Is Amiga or PC better?" No, I wouldn't want to say that. You find one of these yes or no things that it's not being blocked, and the answer will come out as first sentence, yes, and the first sentence will be a yes answer. The second sentence will be a no answer. Did the Soviet Union place offensive weapons in Cuba in 1962? There is a definite answer to that. But if you ask ChatGPT, the first paragraph will say that it did, and the second paragraph will say that it didn't.
Excuse me. And any graduate student worth his salt can argue both sides of that question.
There you go.
Are
So
ICBMs offensive weapons or are they defensive? Khrushchev argued they were defensive weapons.
Yes. Well, you can argue both, but Khrushchev would have picked one, and the U.S. ambassador would have picked another, while ChatGPT basically just goes into a tailspin because it doesn't understand the meaning of the question. And so it
gobbles up both and spits both out. If you're lucky, you get both answers from it, but frequently you get a very confident wrong answer. Not frequently enough to blow the
cover
hype. Well, the large portions of the press run with the hype.
Don't trigger me on the press.
The propaganda's got around the internet before the truth has its boots on.
Well, yes, exactly. The problem is that media, whichever type you want, social media, mass media, whatever offends you gets attention and media sells attention, right? So the scarier, the better, or the
Just chop up.
Live streaming is on.
Carry on.
Okay, we're
all
good.
right. So let's catch up. So we covered glowworm, which was light type emanations, and now we have heat tap, which are sound type emanations. Those are essentially the two new things that have come out in the last couple of years in the open. I don't remember if heat tap is also associated with Israel. I seem to remember it is, but I can't quite be sure. So let's go find out. Where were my links here? Should have the GitHub. Okay. Let's see what we have on the paper. So there are multiple videos of this type. And they all look essentially the same. So we don't need to see them all. But the thing that's interesting here is the glowworm team, by the way, released all their work, so you could reproduce it if you wanted. Excuse me. The heat tap author has actually released the source code, so you can reproduce it even more readily. I don't remember the weights of the trained model are here, or if you need to build a data set and train the model, but the key tap system is fully here, and there are 3 or 4 different videos of how to do this. Oh, and now there is a new thing that I hadn't seen before. You can try the system online. Let's see if we can do it. Let's see. No prior training required. Funds in your browser. All right. Where am I supposed to type? Key presses up here. All right. Let me type somewhere off screen. No, I'm not getting the sound to the application. Oh, there is a record button right there. Let's try that. I'm not getting the sound into the system. Let's try something else here. Why are the microphones not? We're not muted.
Now, of course, I probably crashed the entire system. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we
we can.
All right, so that's a start. Let's see if we can switch back to the other microphone. Yeah, it doesn't hear, even though it should. Well, I think that they're fighting each other between the US and this thing. Okay, well, we'll give that up. But yeah, it looks like there is a way to try that in line. I was trying to see if it could decode what I was typing, but we can't seem to get the sound all the way in there. So that's the second one that's interesting besides glowworm. So there is some work that is finally getting out in the public in terms of these side emanations, not for YEM because that's the government's domain, but for light and audio apparently. So something is starting to be discussed more publicly. Let me see if I have anything else. When I surveyed all the research, I may have found something.
Federico, we're not hearing you at all now. Hey, Federico, we're not hearing you. We're not getting audio from you.
Yeah, he may have had to turn that. He may have had to have muted in order to record keystrokes.
He's not muted. It looks like he's not hearing us tell him that we're not hearing him. I think his microphone's just dead.
Yeah, he's wearing earbuds that don't work well under Linux. But he's got a Mac. That's different.
Is there any way in Jitsi to get his attention if he's not watching the chat?
Not really.
Actually, maybe a private message would alert him. Let's see if I can find out how to do that. Send private message. Here we go.
I bet a phone call would do the trick.
That's true.
I'm sorry, say again?
What? Oh, is that you, Federico?
Yeah, that's me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. You've been like dead silent for about probably 5 minutes or so.
Oh, wow.
So what have you said in the past 5 minutes?
All right, interesting. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you now.
Right. For some reason, the main microphone is not connecting, but I guess you can hear me from the microphone of the laptop. It's better than nothing. So I was saying that besides the key tap thing, so we have looked at the audio emanations and the light emanations, There seems to be open research on this, while EM is of still the province of the government's work. There is another result that was interesting that came out in the last couple of years, which is not a direct emanation. It's something that you can use when you have already compromised the target system. But it was interesting because it was also an audio result. And so the idea is that once you have compromised the system that is air-gapped, you can exfiltrate data using ultrasound signals. And those are not going to go very far. You probably can't leave the room, certainly can't leave the building. Ultrasound requires quite a bit of energy to go far. But you can defeat an air gap with it, that's for sure. And it looks like you can do it with mobile devices, not just laptops. So that was an interesting result in terms of exfiltrating information from an air-gapped system. I've not seen.
It went silent again. The last thing we heard is we have not seen. Oops. I have to send the private chat again. Private message.
A payment transaction using ultrasound.
Okay. Now, we didn't hear you for a little bit there. Seems as soon as I click on private chat, I could hear you again, but you were silent for ever since you said we haven't seen, and then it cut off there.
We have. Did you catch the summary of the different types? And did you catch the ultrasound part?
If it was before that, then we cut all that. Yeah, which is when you said we haven't seen, it just cut off in mid-sentence right there. You went.
We haven't seen. Oh, we haven't seen. I haven't seen a proof of concept of a nefarious attack using ultrasound. The proof of concept that I've seen was essentially a payment system. It wasn't data exfiltration. It was basically a handshake with a target device to do a payment transaction. I guess the author didn't want to build a nefarious system, but obviously ultrasound could be used as an exfiltration channel, and his POC demonstrates it very well. And I think that's pretty much all that I have. Bill, do you know of some other interesting results? Some other recent interesting results? That's not classified.
Oh, I don't know anything.
Thank you, Federico.
I don't know anything recent and classified. The keyboard training one is the most interesting combined with recent that I recall. But the glowworm is and related are pretty awesome.
You're getting a lot of noise. Everyone's unmuted.
The glowworm seems to be pretty reliable. The audio one is somewhat sensitive to the type of keyboard. Like these shallow keyboards that Apple devices have are not ideal. You would really have to smack pretty hard to get it to work well. But on standard, not IBM style 1980s faculty keyboard, just on a standard desktop keyboard, the audio system works pretty well as well. And I don't believe that the model there, well, it's a model, so it could have learned anything, but it's just a AML trained on a sample set, right? The sample set is probably not large enough that it can use the language that you're using as a way to augment its accuracy. It's pretty well known that you can even recognize what language is being spoken just by looking at sequences of 3 or 4 characters, which is largely what Facebook and others use to auto-detect language when you start typing into an input box. So unless the training set for KeyTap is huge, that AI wouldn't have that information. So there are ways to augment the result that are fairly straightforward, which is just use knowledge of the language, use knowledge of the dictionary of that language, and the AI is essentially understanding the layout of the keyboard and distance between the keys and the sounds that you make on different parts of the keyboard. And it's remarkable that it works well with generic training for all keyboards. But obviously, if you have specific target in mind and you know what type of laptop they use, you can train specifically on that. You can tune the algorithm to work against the MacBook Pro, and then the shallow keyboard will not be as much of a problem. Well, I also heard that Apple is making the keyboard less shallow, so maybe they're making it more comfortable for us, but also easier to use. All right, that's all I have. Unless you gentlemen have any additions, I think we'll stop here.
Okay, thank you very much, Federico.
Yeah, thanks, Federico.
And Jabber, I will send you a proper abstract at some point later tonight, so that you can update the website and you don't have the scale preview, which is not accurate. This is not scale preview.
Okay, that'd be great. Thanks.
All right, we are literally overwhelmed by stuff that we need to do for IBM here, but I think that I caught up, so I should be able to send you that tonight. Please, let's make the website accurate.
Okay. So does anyone else have any questions? No, apparently not.